Well, good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion. Wow, we're at Friday already. This week has been an absolutely incredible week, one of the best weeks in a really long period of time. And I say that because of what's going on in the markets right now and the movement that we're seeing and the shifting and the rotation and all of that has been absolutely extraordinary. But I think the only way to really encapsulate this is to bring us back to Wednesday. And Wednesday, we had that extreme move to the upside. The markets were screaming up over 500 plus points on the Dow, really moving rapidly to the upside. That moved us into yesterday where we were in negative territory. Then there was some news out from the ECB and the PPP, that program of theirs, and the amount of money was much higher than everybody expected. And because of that, we jumped up a little bit in the pre-market, fell right back down again. Well, that was pretty interesting how yesterday actually continued to move around and continued to shift around. We had a pretty nice big run once again. I know this sounds like an old record, but the final 45 minutes. In the last 45 minutes of the day, we jumped about 200 plus points. So big move, got ourselves back into the green. The NASDAQ was off a little bit, but the dislocation that's been there continues to be there. So that was not something of a surprise. S&P was down just a little bit, but the Dow got itself all the way back up. And so it was an interesting reaction from a market from where it was to where we finished up. But where were some of the signs of strength? We've been talking about Boeing. We had that unusual option activity in Boeing that was just very, very short term. We knew that. And going into it, how fast could Boeing move? Would it be able to move fast enough? Well, it did. And it was explosive. Yesterday, it was up about 6.5%. You had financials that were moving to the upside as well. And they were really one of the driving forces. And we look over at the volatility index, trading around 26. So we had volatility that had broken out of that range that was a little bit higher, call it 27.31, closed down there towards 26. So that was an interesting factor. We also have been talking about these volumes, and these volumes, wow, absolutely extraordinary the last two sessions. On Wednesday, nearly 34 million. On Thursday, about 32 million. So that gives you a little idea. These are huge numbers. We love the derivatives markets for this reason. There is growth. There is strength. We see these numbers all the time. And you go back, and I've brought this up many, many times, but I think it's very important to continue to point this out. Monday, Tuesday, much slower, much slower. Still would be, if that was the pace of the year, a record year by leaps and bounds, by millions of contracts per day. And yet those felt like extremely slow days relative to what we've been seeing the last 2 days and this year itself. Now we're averaging about 28 million per day for the year. And right now in the month of June, as we balance out the first 4 days, it's around 28 million. So we're right on target right now. So that's pretty interesting as well. You know, the one area, and I keep bringing this up, and I've brought it up time and time again, and you know, it's interesting because now I'm starting to see a few more people jumping onto this whole thing, but it's not the Power Five. It's a much broader move, and that broader move continues to get more broad all the time in terms of the participation of these moves, even on days where we aren't necessarily going screaming to the upside, but we're just seeing rotations that look very healthy to me, that you're not so dependent on five names or a singular couple of sectors or all that kind of thing. You're seeing this start to widen out a little bit. So oil services yesterday up about 5.5%. Really nice move again to the upside. Oh, and by the way, you got the airlines, you got hotels, you've got casinos, you've got cruise ships, all of that kind of thing, all starting to get a little bit more. Matter of fact, you just wonder sometimes, wow, are they moving so fast to the upside? But you also have to recall how far they had fallen. And in many cases, many of these names are not even close to full recovery, not even in the same ballpark. But so today, as we're looking at today, we're up about 300 points in the pre-market. Then we jumped significantly, and we jumped significantly because of these job numbers that came out. And the expectations were to lose anywhere. You take your pick, 7 million. Let's just say the number 7 million. We're going to lose about 7 million. Actually, we gained 2.5 million jobs created. So that was something that really, it's still something that's being talked about on television. That those numbers came out hours ago now, 2.5 hours ago or more, and still being talked about because it is very interesting. It is a little confusing. And I think a lot of people are still trying to grapple with how are these numbers, how did the numbers change so much from what the estimates were going into this whole thing? One way or the other, market did jump. The market was immediately up about 600 points. We got to the start of the day. I'm looking over there right now. We're up about 750, almost 800 points actually right now. So huge move to the upside. And the Nasdaq, which was kind of lagging a little bit, and when I say that, I mean it's been screaming to the upside. It's hit record highs, and it's been an absolute freak show run to the upside. But we've been seeing that rotation, as I say. So the participation of the NASDAQ, even on a day like today where you see the NASDAQ and it's screaming to the upside, it is a little bit different and it's not quite moving at the same rate that you're seeing some of the other major indices. I'll give you a great example. We're now up 830 points. That's 3% on the Dow. The NASDAQ's up less than 2%. So there's a pretty significant gap there in terms of performance. Doesn't mean the NASDAQ's not performing because up 2% is a huge day. The NASDAQ's up almost 180 points. So where's volatility now? We've dripped underneath 24. We are getting closer to that 20 number. And it sort of makes some sense because the nervousness is coming out of the markets. But at the same time, these kind of moves, you would expect to see volatility kind of hanging in there a little bit. And we'll keep an eye on that. And let's not forget, it's a Friday. You're moving into the weekend. You start to price in the weekend. For those that don't understand what I'm talking about, I, as a former market maker standing on the floor, I would move my machines that helped me price things. I would move those around and shift those around and go a day ahead about midway through the session or less, and then go another day ahead to get myself pricing towards Sunday. And then by the end of the trading session, I would be pricing my options very close to what I would expect to be on Mondays. So that movement does change things a lot. That's just sort of some of the intricacies of what happens in terms of the option pricing going into a weekend, especially long weekends. Not that this is a long weekend because it's not, but what a huge move to the upside. What's getting a hit to the downside? Gold. Makes some sense. A lot of people getting a little bit, there have been places where people have gone to put substantial amounts of some of their investments away, and gold has been one of those. It's been hanging around 1,700, got up to 1,750 today, well below 1,700 right now on a pretty swift move to the downside. So that's something to keep an eye on. By the way, crude oil, I brought up the OIH and just some of the amazing movement that we had there. That continues today as well. The OIH today, the last I looked, it was up 11%. And that's with crude oil up about 4%. Crude oil getting very, very close now to $40 a barrel. That's a pretty substantial move to the upside. So what's really powering the markets today? You got financials. They've been up strong. Energy also up strong. Energy not as big of an impact on the S&P as it once was, but I show energy up about a little over 6.5%. You got names like ExxonMobil up even more than 6.5% as of right now. Like I mentioned, the OIH, the energy services, that's something pretty interesting, up about 11%. Boeing's up another 11%. It's probably up more than that by now. It's been a freak show. Industrials have been moving to the upside. A lot of the same participants continue to be a lot of the participants that are pushing that to the upside as well, the industrials. Semis lagging a little bit. When I say a 3% and you're saying lagging, that's really interesting because a 3% move is a pretty strong move out of any index. But I look at the semiconductors, the SMH, that's up about 3% right now. Let's take a quick look just to give you a 90-minute run through of where we are exactly right now. So Boeing's up 15% right now. It's trading over 211, getting close to 212. Absolutely extraordinary run to the upside. This in a 3 or 4 days, just take a look at what's going on with Boeing. It has been absolutely extraordinary. ExxonMobil now up 7.5%. You got Raytheon and Caterpillar starting to pick up even more so. They're both up more than 5% each. So a nice move to the upside. I mentioned financials. Everybody's participating once again. We've got all the major names that are going up to the upside. You got Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, Citi and Bank of America, all the usual suspects, and all the rest of the banks that we probably should cover even more, some of the other next level banks. But American Express, that was a name that was well underneath $100 a share not too long ago, started to get up closer to $100 a share. Now I show it trading 111 and a quarter. That's a big move in a very short period of time for that one. So, sticking with financials, We always like to hit some unusual activity. So here's my unusual for today. We had some major buying in Barclays not too terribly long ago, and they were buying the July 6 calls. Those calls have screamed to the upside. And so what are they doing? Well, they're getting sold, 30,000 of those being sold, and that trader or that fund wants to remain in the trade, but they want to take a little something off the table. Smart move. I always liked seeing that as part of the trade if that's possible. So the buyer of a July 7 calls now in BCS, Barclays, 30,500 of those for 30 cents. I had just gone through my positions. I can show you. This is, there it is. These are the positions that I just probably bought in the last maybe 7 trading sessions total. So the last week and a half or so. I took off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 positions off unbelievably fast, and added 3 more. One of those positions I took off was Barclays. I was a great run. I said, hey, thank you very much. I'm going to get out. I took that position off, being disciplined. We talk about this all the time. And lo and behold, not too long after I took that off, they were buying and they did this roll. I just jumped right back in. So that was one of my ads today. So it just shows you that you've got to be disciplined, but you know, it sometimes it's not always easy to be disciplined. We talk about it all the time, but that's all part of this whole trade, to be able to keep yourself in line and understand all of this will help you be more efficient. And that's exactly what our goal is here. We want to educate you. You got to understand derivatives markets. You have to understand the trading side of things. And with that comes the understanding of the discipline that needs to be there. Raul Paul last week was with us. He just joined us on Monday, actually, for our round table and did an unbelievable job. He talked about discipline and how important that is and why that's helped him be more successful. So this isn't just something that we talk about. This is something that we work on and work through and work with every single day, is the discipline. And I'll tell you what, a lot of the time, it's great to have a great support group around you. And we have a great support group at the Market Rebellion. Guys are always talking and chipping in and giving each other ideas and holding each other accountable as well, and trying to do their very best to be disciplined, because that is what gives you an opportunity to get a little bit closer to success. Doesn't guarantee it, but it sure does help. Folks, have a great day of trading. Have a great weekend. It's been a really, really wild ride this week in the markets. I don't expect it to be any different next week. Have a great day of trading.